I think this code could give us some opportunity to explore increment decrement operators, but before I continue, I just want to show you that in my output right here it indicates that my program is still running. Of course it's the case because this is an endless loop. So just want to give you this warning that you really need to kind of pay attention to what's happening here. It's easy to forget this and keep doing some changes and sort of like starting another instance of this running program, and because it can like create multiple tabs of this output. It certainly could be used in some really advanced testing cases, but in our case I just strongly advise that you can use this X to cancel the running program, right? So just say yes, cancel, and stop this and just move on to other things like I do here. So my idea is that instead of printing even and odd by asking the value, I will use the counter. Okay, I will ask user for the counter, and I will say system.out and print. This time I'll use print method just to print the one prompt, and say how many numbers you want to print. Okay, and I enter my number, which I call count. And instead of using this endless loop, what I will do, I will use this count, and I will just decrement this count like this in one spot. And so this time I will derive the value from the count. So I'll just use this count and say count divided by 2 and print the value of the count, and just print these numbers like that, and change this also to print, and add the space here and here just to space out these outputs, even or odd, and just print them on one line. Okay, so I have this type of loop, and it tells me that there's something. Oh yes, as long as this count is, say, greater than 0. Yeah. So as long as this count with the decrement in front of it is greater than 0. So let's try this. How many numbers you want to print? So I'll say 8 numbers, and so it prints 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So you see that it really has printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values, and this is due to the fact that when I entered 8, what it did was that it decremented the value. Of course, the decrement operator that I use over here subtracts 1 from the counter, so it becomes 7, and prefix decrement instantly decrements the value. Then the value is checked against 0. If it's greater, we keep doing it, and this is why it printed 7, 6 through 1. Okay, so anyway, what we could do is that we could just like add +1 right here, and comment here +1 needed because of decrement. Okay, whatever. So we kind of like probably need to document it a little bit. So we can take the number, instantly increment it, and then make this loop work. So with this changed loop, you see that once again I say 8, and this time it prints 8, 7, and so forth. Just an example of this decrement, and there's always some sort of boundary issue. The edges of our ranges of numbers could be giving us some strange, sometimes short of 1 or extra 1 or some other oddity. So just make sure that you test your code. But this is your example of a while loop. that's using a decrement of a variable, and this variable eventually gets to 0, and we exit the loop. However, one caution here is that, of course, if I can enter a negative integer, then it should not really impact anything, because we check for only positive values. In other words, just another type of testing, if I say -8, it just exits and never prints anything, because -8 is already decremented, becomes -9, and so this is not greater than 0, so we never enter this loop, and things like this could be a little confusing. So perhaps we could do some additional validation. Dealing with user input is always a little tricky to make sure that you handle all possibilities, like this strange -8. Okay, so you have to you have to maybe do a little bit more checking and give your users additional information to at least explain why it never printed anything. So obviously a scanner will give you both positive and negative integers. So this is all I would like to say about increment and decrement right now, just basically adding one and subtracting one. There's one other version of the decrement like this. So in this, let's take this apart a little bit to talk about it. Let's do it. Let me just try to illustrate it here. So let's say that originally we enter 8 like we did, and we add 1, so it becomes 9. So this number right here is 9. So we start with this value equal to 9. Okay, so this is 9. So when you use postfix decrement version of decrement, unlike I did before with in front of it, the original value is compared to 0, and then the number is decremented. So this number becomes 8, right? It changes to 8. And so we loop like this. With prefix decrement, as we did the first time, what will be happening is that, of course, again, if I enter 8 plus 1, it becomes 9. So this time, instead of using the value, prefix decrement will subtract 1, decrement by 1, before using it in the rest of this expression. So what's going to happen, it will become 8 instantly, and it will be compared against 0. So we say that essentially, if I go back to the other version like this, okay, so this is postfix decrement. We have two types of increment and decrements, prefix and postfix versions. Essentially, the rule is that when you have this this version of decrement, postfix decrement, basically the condition or any other expression is evaluated as if it did not exist here. Okay, so basically this is what happens. And then after this, on the sideline, the counter, after this is being evaluated, after that happened, after this condition is checked, minus takes place after, in case of a postfix increment. I'm just showing you what's really happening. And then, so this thing is called side effect. And side effect is really like something that happens in addition to what's already happening. So basically, we have this condition to check, but in addition, because if I just bring it back the way it was, like this, right, the counter will be incremented after this condition is finished, after its result is computed. Okay, so it evaluates to true or false, and then the counter is decremented, because that's how this thing behaves. And speaking of side effect, in most cases sounds like something that you don't want, or something that adds some complexity to what you're doing. So just be careful with this, because I'll give you this analogy. Like, for instance, you're calling your friend and you're using the phone number. And the side effect of the phone call is that every time you call, the number changes. So next time you have to call this person again, you have to dial a different number. And the number changes as a result of your call. Sounds a little crazy, but that's the analogy to a side effect. Because we're doing something like we're concerned about counter being greater than 0. But as a side effect, we are also, after this evaluation is complete, we're decrementing it by 1. Okay, so that's just adds strange behavior here. So whenever possible, I prefer this version, which is prefix increment. Here it's more straightforward. Basically, the value is decremented before the condition is checked. So this original, if I enter 8 plus 1, 9, so the original value 9 is actually decremented by 1 before the expression is evaluated. So now it will become 8, and then 8 will be checked again 0, and the rest of it will proceed as follows. So this is a better version of, whenever possible, I use only prefix increment. So that's my advice to you, to construct your logic with prefix increment. And don't just casually do this thinking that it's the same as this. So my advice to you is, this is a better choice. It's very nice and good to have these increments and decrements available to us, but always keep these expressions, using them as simple as possible, and never do it twice in the expression. Like this counter should never be should decrement it twice in the same expression, because the behavior is undefined. It's just not a very good choice. But using it once like this is very clear, I think, and it's okay to do it like this. So there's our little coverage of increment and decrement. Of course, I encourage you to read the books and dive into all the details and use your own examples, tweak the code like I do in our presentations, and see how it works for you, whether those expectations are fine. Okay,